For making my ex-husband cry with one sentence after he left me over my clothes? The sound of the plate smashing against the kitchen tiles was the starting gun. There was no prior argument, not even a sigh of warning. Just the sharp crash of shattered porcelain and Marcus's voice, flat and final. Enough, Lila. I am done. I did not flinch. I kept scrubbing the pan where I had made the eggs for his breakfast. The hot water burned my already reddened and rough hands. 10 years of hot water, of cleaning solutions, of rubber gloves. 10 years. Are you not going to say anything? He asked from behind me. I felt his presence near the door, surely in his expensive suit, the one I ironed daily, smelling of the cologne that was no longer the one I had gifted him. You have already said it all, Marcus, I replied without turning around. Do you want another coffee before you leave? For goodness sake, Lila, look at how you are. Look at this house. Look at yourself. This time I dried my hands on my apron, the same cotton apron with little blue flowers I had worn for 10 years. It had an oil stain on the hem from 3 days ago. I did not have time to wash it. I never had time. I finally turned and looked at him. Marcus Lawson, my husband, the man I fell in love with at 22, with his easy smile and his promises to travel the world. Now he had gray hair at his temples and a permanent line of displeasure between his eyebrows. The eyes that used to shine when they saw me now only showed weariness, a deep, accumulated weariness. What is wrong with how I am? I asked, genuinely curious. You are like this. He made a vague gesture encompassing my hair pulled back in a frayed bun, my old shirt, my pajama pants. Always in those clothes, always smelling of food or cleaning products. You have stopped taking care of yourself, stopped caring. A silence weighed heavily in the kitchen. The only sound was the dripping of the faucet that had been crying out for a new washer for months. Your parents, I said slowly. Your father cannot move, your mother needs help for everything, even to take her medication. The home health aides come only 2 hours a day. Who do you think does everything else? That is no excuse, he snapped, but avoided my gaze. Other women do it, and they do not go through life like a full-time housekeeper. There, right there, I felt something. It was not pain. It was something colder, sharper, like a knife that had been rusting inside me and suddenly snapped. I see, I said. Marcus took a deep breath, as if preparing for a speech he had mentally rehearsed. He took a leather envelope from his briefcase, placed it on the kitchen table, stained with crumbs and a coffee ring from this morning. Here are the papers. I have spoken with my lawyer. It is what is best for both of us, Lila. We are stagnant. This is no longer a marriage. I approached the table, my hands still damp. I left a small mark on the wood. I opened the envelope unhurriedly. I pulled out the document. Uncontested divorce agreement. Black letters on white. I saw my full name. Lila Thompson Lawson. I would not be Lawson for much longer. Are you not going to cry? To beg, to ask why? Marcus's voice sounded strangely disappointed. He expected a drama, an ending fitting his narrative. The abandoned woman, devastated, acknowledging her failure. I had a cheap blue pen in the kitchen utensil jar. I took it. I rested the document on the table, pushing aside a plate with toast crusts. I looked for the signature line. My hand did not tremble even once. I signed with the same calmness with which I wrote down the grocery list. Lila, Marcus said, a note of disbelief in his voice. I folded the document, put it back in the envelope, and handed it to him. Here you go. Do you need anything else from me today? Your mother has an appointment with the physical therapist at 11. I left her clothes ready on the chair. The midday medication is in the pillbox, already divided. Your father is due for his medical routine. The supplies are in the bathroom cabinet, on the top shelf. And I have prepared a casserole for dinner. It is in the fridge. It just needs to be heated up. He took the envelope as if it were red hot. He stared at me, searching my eyes for some hint of pain, of anger, of something. He only found exhaustion, an exhaustion so ancient and deep that it had turned to stone. Is that all? He asked, astonished. For today, yes. I nodded, taking off my apron. I am going upstairs to pack my suitcase. I will be out before the aide arrives. I climbed the stairs, not to the spacious master bedroom that had been ours. That room had been empty for me for years, ever since Marcus's father suffered the stroke and we had to install the medical bed in the guest room on the first floor. I slept on a small daybed in the study next to their room to hear if he called me at night. My true space had been reduced in recent years to a closet in the hallway and 3 drawers. I pulled out the suitcase, the same one I came with 15 years ago from my hometown. It was not very full. I packed some jeans, a few shirts, a sweater, underwear. Nothing from the master bedroom closet, those clothes from a decade ago, from when we still went out, from when we were still Lila and Marcus. Those clothes belonged to a ghost, to the woman who danced flamenco in small Los Angeles venues and laughed so hard that tears came to her eyes. That woman had died a long time ago, replaced by a functional, practical being, a being with useful hands. In a drawer under the pile of clothes I found a small cardboard box. I opened it. Inside was a tortoiseshell comb, a handkerchief embroidered by my grandmother, and a photograph. In the photo I was 22 years old. I was on a stage in a blood-red ruffled dress, my hair loose, my arms raised, my mouth half open in a cry of joy or spirit, you never knew. Behind blurry you could see a young Marcus looking at me as if I were the sun. I closed the box, left it on the bed. It was not part of the practical woman. It was an archaeological remain. It had no place in the suitcase. Passing by my in-laws' room I stopped. The door was ajar. Inside you could smell the unmistakable scent of long-term illness, cleaning products, medicines, and a faint sadness. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was sitting in her armchair looking out the window. Her eyes, once so lively, were now a dull pale blue. Robert, my father-in-law, lay in the medical bed, connected to a machine that assisted his breathing with a rhythmic and mechanical sound. Margaret turned her head slowly. "Did you break something?" she asked with her cracked voice. "Yes, Margaret, a plate." "I am sorry." She made a gesture with her hand, as if swatting a fly. "It does not matter. They break on their own anyway." I looked at Robert. His chest rose and fell to the rhythm of the machine. 10 years, 3,650 days. Baths, meals, assistance with daily needs. Sleepless nights listening to his breathing. Reading the newspaper aloud. The radio always tuned to a local station. 10 years of life reduced to these meticulous, exhausting cares. "I am going out for a while, Margaret." "To the store?" "Bring eggs. Marcus likes eggs for breakfast." "Yes," I lied without remorse. "I will bring eggs." I went down the stairs with the suitcase. Marcus was still in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, looking at the brown envelope as if he did not know what it was. "I am leaving," I said. He stood up. "Where are you going?" "That does not matter to you anymore, Marcus." "Lila, wait. It does not have to be like this. We can talk about the conditions, the support, the house. The house is yours. It always was. I only lived in it. I do not want anything else." "That is not smart. You have rights." After all this time, I interrupted him for the first time with a hint of something that was not exhaustion. "I just want my time. What is left of it?" I opened the front door. The morning light of Los Angeles, bright and clear, hit me full in the face. It had been weeks, maybe months, since I had been out at this hour. I was always inside, between those 4 walls, attending to the noises of the machines, Margaret's whispers, Robert's eloquent silence. "And my parents?" Marcus asked. And in his voice there was something new, panic. The panic of someone who suddenly realizes the magnitude of what he has broken. I stopped on the threshold. Without turning around, I said, "The home health aide arrives at 10. The emergency numbers are on the fridge, stuck with a magnet. The family doctor comes on Thursdays. Goodbye, Marcus." And I walked out. I closed the door behind me. There was no slam, just the soft click of the well-oiled mechanism. I went down the 3 steps to the sidewalk. The suitcase made a dull noise on the concrete. I did not look back. I knew he would be behind the window watching me go, hoping perhaps that I would collapse, that I would turn around running, that I would beg for another chance. The woman he had met would have done that. The woman he had loved. But that woman had died a long, long time ago. What walked down the street, with a half-empty suitcase and a heart turned to ash, was something else. It was a ghost with useful hands. And ghosts do not cry. They only fade away. At the corner I stopped, took a deep breath. The air smelled of car exhaust, of freshly brewed coffee from a nearby cafe, of the living, indifferent city. I took the phone from my pocket. It had a single notification. A message from my childhood friend Sophie, the only one who had never stopped writing year after year, despite my silence. "Are you still alive out there, dancer?" I typed a reply with fingers that began to tremble now that there were no witnesses. "Yes, and I need a place to stay. Just for a few days." The reply arrived instantly. "The key is under the flower pot. As always, the place is yours and the wine too." For the first time in 10 years, I felt something akin to a smile on my lips. It was not joy. It was something else. The first and slight movement of an earth that has been frozen during an eternal winter. A slight, almost imperceptible tremor. But there it was. I grabbed the suitcase and walked toward the bus stop. I did not know who Lila Thompson was. I did not know where she was going. But for the first time in a decade, she was no longer Lila Thompson Lawson. And that, for now, was enough. The doorbell at Sophie's door rang like a shrill and cheerful shop bell, a brutal contrast to the heavy silence of the house in Pasadena. Before I could look for the key, the door swung wide open. My God, Lila. Sophie had not changed. Well, yes, she had a few more gray hairs in her curly brown mane and some marked crow's feet that spoke of laughter, not worries. She wore jeans stained with paint and a rock band shirt I did not recognize. She wrapped me in a hug so tight it knocked the breath out of me. She smelled of linseed oil, coffee, and freedom. "You scared me to death with your message," she murmured against my shoulder before pulling away to look me up and down. Her smile froze, vanished. Her honey-colored eyes darkened. "Honey, what happened to you?" "It is a long story, Sophie." "Well, come in. We have all the time in the world. And the wine, as I told you." Her loft in Echo Park was the exact opposite of Marcus's neat, aseptic, and silent house. It was a vibrant chaos. Paintings, some finished, others barely sketches, leaning against the walls, canvases spread on the floor, books piled on every available surface, and light, lots of light pouring through the large windows. Here life did not just happen. It screamed. It spilled over uncontrollably. "Throw the suitcase over there," she indicated, pointing to a corner. "The sofa bed is unfolded. It is yours for as long as you need. Now sit down. I am going to get the red wine." I sat in a plush armchair, covered by a colorful blanket. I sank into it. The exhaustion, the real one, the 10-year one, hit me suddenly like a wave. Every muscle, every bone screamed. Sophie returned with 2 large glasses filled with an intense red wine. She handed me one. "Drink. Then we talk. Or not, whatever you want." I drank. The wine was strong, fruity. It burned a little going down, but then brought a warmth that spread from my stomach, a warmth I had not felt for years. "Marcus?" Sophie asked directly. She had never been one to beat around the bush. "He gave me the divorce papers this morning. I signed them." Sophie did not seem surprised. She nodded slowly, taking a sip of her wine. "It was about time, Lila." "My God. It was about time. What do you mean?" "Lila, darling. You have been dying inside for 10 years. We all saw it, everyone except him. Of course. Or maybe he did see it and did not care. The official reason. My old jeans, my dirty apron, that I have stopped taking care of myself," I said, and my voice sounded flat, as if reciting the grocery list. Sophie let out a snort of indignation. "Please. And what has he done these 10 years while you provided full-time care for his parents? Because let us call things by their name. Lila, you were not just helping them. You were their primary caregiver, lifting them, assisting with all their needs, feeding them, putting them to bed. That is not simple caring. That is being everything to 2 adults with major health issues." Sophie's words, so raw, so precise, pierced me like darts. I brought my hands to my face. I did not cry. I was just so tired. I could not leave them, Sophie. He worked. He traveled. He was absent. Absent, sure, very comfortable. And you, the woman who danced flamenco until the early hours, you became a shadow, an unpaid full-time caregiver, without gratitude, without a single day off. "I had one," I said, lowering my hands, looking at the wine trembling in my glass. "When my mother died back home." He came home that day, took charge, let me go. I was away for 48 hours for the funeral. Then I came back. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was furious. She said her meals did not taste the same, that I had neglected Robert. Sophie stood up furiously and began pacing the room. I just cannot believe it. And what did you do? What was I going to do? Apologize and keep going. Robert needed his routines. Margaret could not manage alone. There was no one else. He could have placed them in a full-time care facility. He could have hired round-the-clock help. He could afford it, Lila. His construction company was booming, thanks in part to having someone at home doing the hardest work for free. I had never seen it like that, like an unbalanced duty. To me it was a responsibility, a heavy, suffocating responsibility, but one I took on the day I said, I do. And even more so the day Robert had the stroke and life stopped. Do you know what is the worst part, Sophie? I said, and my voice did tremble a little now. The worst part is not the exhaustion, nor the lack of sleep, nor the most difficult caregiving tasks. The worst part is the invisibility. You stop being a person. You are a pair of hands, a pair of eyes that watch, a voice that says, take the pill. Your name stops being Lila. It is hey or you or the caregiver. Marcus stopped seeing me years ago. His parents, well, to them I was always the girl who took their son, the lucky helper. Sophie sat next to me on the arm of the chair and put a hand on my shoulder. Tell me everything from the beginning. You need to let it out. There is no one else here, just you and me. And this magnificent wine. And then with the afternoon light filtering through the dusty windows, surrounded by Sophie's creative chaos, I began to speak, and the words trapped for a decade came out like a torrent. Flashback. 10 years ago. The phone rang at 3 in the morning. Marcus picked it up startled. His face fell. What? Where? How is he? It was his mother, Margaret. His father, Robert, had fallen in the bathroom. He could not move. He could not speak. We rushed to the hospital. The scene was out of a movie. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smells, doctors with grave faces. Diagnosis, massive stroke, probable partial recovery with severe aftereffects, total dependence. Marcus collapsed. It was his hero, his father, the self-made man who had built his company from nothing. I held him. It was what you did. Do not worry, I told him, stroking his hair. We will get through this together. 2 weeks later, Robert left the hospital. He needed an orthopedic bed, a hoist, a special wheelchair, oxygen, intravenous medication, and round-the-clock care. We will hire someone, Marcus said, pale, looking at the hospital bills. But home health aides were extremely expensive, and Margaret, destroyed by fear and pride, refused to let strangers see her husband in such a state. No, it is a shame. Family must take care of family, she said, fixing her blue eyes, now full of panic, on me. I was 28 years old. My career as a flamenco dancer in small Los Angeles venues was starting to take off. I had landed a permanent spot in a place downtown. It was not much, but it was mine. It was the light at the end of the tunnel of years of struggle. Marcus took my hands one night in our bed. Lila, honey, I know it is a lot to ask, but could you do it just for a while? Until Mom gets used to it, until we find a better solution. You are stronger, more practical. I have to keep the company going. Dad cannot anymore. If I do not work twice as hard, we lose everything. His eyes begged. I loved him. He was my husband. His family was my family. Just for a while, I repeated like a mantra, convincing myself. I left the performance space. I left the classes. I left my dance shoes in a closet. I put on an apron. I learned to operate the hoist, to prepare the medical routines to prevent pressure sores. I learned to decipher Robert's sounds, to calm Margaret's anxiety, to administer medication, to deal with the aides who came and went. Time turned into months, then into years. Marcus worked more and more. He went out with clients, came back late smelling of alcohol and sometimes of a cheap perfume that was not mine. I was too exhausted to ask, too empty to feel jealous. One day I tried to put on one of my ruffled dresses. It would not close. My dancer muscles had become the functional muscles of a caregiver, strong to lift weights, but without grace, without flexibility. I looked at myself in the mirror. I had dull hair, pale skin, deep dark circles. My eyes had lost their shine. They were my mother's eyes after my father left her. Resigned eyes. That was when I stopped looking in the mirror, I concluded, emptying my wine glass that Sophie had silently refilled several times. One day after another, 1 year after another, until this morning, until the broken plate. Sophie said nothing for a long time. Then she got up and went to the kitchen. She returned with the bottle and filled both glasses again. You have to tell him, she said firmly. Tell him what? Marcus. What it really was. He lived it. He was there. No, Lila, he did not live it. He passed through it. You lived in it. He does not truly know what it has been. He does not know you gave up your career. He does not know about your mother. I am sure he does not know you have been sick. I froze. How do you know that? Because 5 years ago at Lola's wedding you sought me out. You were emaciated. You told me you were losing a lot of weight, that you had terrible pains in your abdomen. I told you to go to the doctor. You told me you could not, that you had no one to leave your in-laws with. Did you finally go? I looked away. I could not hold her gaze. I thought it was stress. Then it passed. Or at least the pains became smaller, more manageable compared to everything else. Sophie closed her eyes, counting to 10. Lila Thompson, you are the most idiotic and brave woman I have ever met. Tomorrow you are going to the doctor. I have a gynecologist friend downtown. I will make an appointment for you. I do not have health insurance. Marcus's. Marcus is over, she cut in sharply. I pay. It is my welcome to life gift. No arguing. For the first time I felt a lump in my throat. Not from sadness, from something else. Someone cared about me, about Lila, not about my useful hands. Thank you, Sophie. You are welcome. Now another thing. What are you going to do? I do not know. I have not thought beyond today. Beyond not having to handle the daily routines, not having to hear Margaret complain about the salt in the food. Well, you are going to think, and you are going to start with this, she said, getting up and going to her bedroom. She returned with an old mobile phone. It is an old one of mine. It has a new prepaid card. Your new number. Marcus's goes in the trash. Or better yet, no. Keep it in case there is something legal, but do not use it from now on. This is your contact with the world, with your world. I took the phone. It was a strange light object, a symbol. And if he needs me? For his parents. Marcus is an adult, Lila. A well-off one. Let him hire 10 aides. Let him move in with them. Let him do what you did. It is his turn. You are done, understand? You are done. The words echoed in the room. You are done. Not like Marcus's, full of contempt. These were full of liberation, of a final verdict. I am scared. I confessed in a whisper. Of course you are scared. You have been in a prison for 10 years. Freedom is scary, but I swear on all I love that it is better, even if it is scary. Now dinner. I ordered some spicy potatoes and an omelette. No casseroles, no purees, food for living people. While we ate, sitting on the floor around the coffee table with plates on our laps, my old phone rang, Marcus's phone. The screen lit up with the name. Marcus. We looked at each other. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it stopped. A minute later, a message. I read it aloud in a monotone voice. Lila. The parents are very upset. Margaret will not stop crying. She says she does not want the afternoon aid. I do not know what to give her for dinner. The casserole, I do not know how to heat it without overcooking it. Call me, please. M. Sophie reached out her hand. Give it to me. I gave her the phone. She, with a calm gesture, opened the window with a dramatic flair that made me let out a muffled laugh. She stuck her arm out and dropped the phone into the void. We heard a faint thud several floors below. Problem solved, she said, turning back with a satisfied smile. Now to the important stuff. Truffle or aioli with the potatoes. That night on Sophie's sofa bed, surrounded by the smell of paint and the city, I fell asleep thinking of the sound of my old phone smashing against the courtyard floor. I did not dream of medical routines or complaints. I dreamed vaguely of an empty stage and a guitar beginning to strum, searching for a rhythm. The attorney's office smelled of polished wood, old paper and authority, a smell that made my skin crawl as soon as I walked through the door. Sophie had wanted to accompany me, but I forbade her. This was something I had to face alone, as I had been alone all those years. My lawyer, Mrs. Patricia Klein, was waiting for me in the meeting room. She was a woman of about 50 with short gray hair, dressed in an impeccable pantsuit. Her eyes behind thin-framed glasses were quick and sharp like a hawk's. She had been recommended by Sophie's gynecologist friend. She is a wolf. She had told me exactly what you need. Mrs. Thompson, sit down, she said with a calm but firm voice. They will arrive in a few minutes. Let us review the key points. Before I could sit down, the door opened. Marcus entered first. He looked impeccable in a navy blue suit that fit him perfectly. Behind him, a blonde woman, a few years younger than me, in a tight dress and high heels, carried a leather folder under her arm and a cold, professional smile. It was his lawyer. And behind them, with a slower step, came Marcus's own lawyer, an older man with a stern expression. Marcus looked at me. He expected to see me destroyed, I suppose, in the same jeans and worn-out shirt from the morning before. Instead, I wore black pants borrowed from Sophie and a simple but clean blouse. I had pulled my hair back. I was not the radiant woman from before, but neither was I the unkempt shadow of yesterday. Something had changed, a stillness, a silent determination. I saw his eyes widen for a moment, surprised, before hardening again. Lila, he greeted with a nod. Marcus, I replied simply. We sat on opposite sides of the long oak table. Marcus's lawyer, Mr. Harlan Whitaker, started pulling out folders. The blonde, Miss Nicole Vance, according to the introduction, handed him documents with military efficiency. I only had Mrs. Patricia Klein and an empty notepad. Well, Mr. Harlan Whitaker began with a raspy voice. Given that this is an uncontested divorce and there are no children in common, everything should be relatively simple. Let us discuss the division of marital assets. Mrs. Patricia Klein nodded slightly. Let us proceed. Marcus took the floor. His tone was the one he used in his business meetings. Impersonal, factual. The main property, the house in Pasadena, was acquired by me before the marriage with funds from an inheritance. It is, therefore, separate property. Lila has no right to it. Mrs. Patricia Klein did not flinch. Agreed. Let us continue. The joint savings, Marcus continued, have been practically non-existent in recent years due to my parents' medical expenses. What remains in the joint account amounts to about $3,000. She can keep half. $1,500, Mrs. Patricia Klein said, writing something on her pad. For 10 years of marriage. Interesting. And the spousal support. Marcus frowned. Miss Nicole Vance intervened with her voice sweet as poisoned honey. We see no basis for spousal support. Mrs. Thompson is a young woman with no disability. During the marriage, she did not generate her own income. It is true, but it was a personal choice. My client did not prevent her from working. The air in the room thickened. Mrs. Patricia Klein put her pen on the table with a sharp click. A personal choice, you say? Does your client consider that providing full-time care for two severely dependent people 24 hours a day for 10 years without any remuneration is a personal choice comparable to, say, deciding not to accept a job? Caring for in-laws, however laudable, does not generate an automatic economic right, Miss Nicole Vance replied without blinking. It was an act of family goodwill, not a profession. It was a non-economic contribution to the household and to your client's assets, Mrs. Patricia Klein kept her voice calm, but every word was ice. Which allowed him to fully dedicate himself to his business, which, according to my research, has tripled in value over the last decade. While my client gave up her professional career, her health, and her autonomy, your client increased his capital. That has a value and it is paid for. Marcus shifted in his seat. That is not the point. I never forbade her to work. She could have organized herself. Organized what, Marcus? I said. It was the first time I spoke. All eyes turned to me. My voice sounded strangely clear in the silent room. I could have organized leaving your father, who could not breathe without assistance alone, or your mother, who could not manage without help, by hiring someone. With what money? Your company was going through rough patches, you said. There was no money for extras. I was the extra, the free one. Marcus turned red. It is not fair to simplify it like that. We all made sacrifices. We all? I asked, leaning slightly forward. Which ones did you make exactly? The sacrifice of working in your office, of traveling to trade fairs, of coming home at 10 at night when everything was already done and asking if there was any dinner left. Miss Nicole Vance coughed. This is not the place for personal reproaches. We are here to agree on legal terms. She is right, Mrs. Patricia Klein said, but she shot me a fleeting look of approval. Let us talk terms. My client gave up a promising artistic career. Testimonies and contracts attest to it. 10 years of full-time caregiving for highly dependent direct relatives represent in the labor market an unperceived salary of at least $30,000 annually. Multiply by 10. Let us talk about compensation. Marcus turned pale. That is madness. $300,000? You are joking. It is not a joke. It is an assessment. We can take it to a judge. And a judge, faced with the evidence of career abandonment and exclusive dedication to caring for highly dependent direct relatives, might even be more generous and add a monthly pension. Would you ruin me? Marcus said, staring at me with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. No, I replied calmly. I do not want to ruin you. I do not want your money. There was a silence. Mrs. Patricia Klein shot me a warning look. Do not speak, it seemed to say, but I had to. What? Marcus asked, confused. I said I do not want your money. I do not want the pension. I do not want the $1,500. I do not want anything in that house. Miss Nicole Vance looked satisfied. Mr. Harlan Whitaker relieved. Only Mrs. Patricia Klein maintained an impassive expression, waiting. Then what do you want? Marcus asked cautiously. I want my things. Mine. The ones I brought to that house when I moved in with you. My memories, my old clothes, my books, my dance shoes. And I want you to leave me alone. Marcus observed me, trying to decipher me. He was looking for the trap, the trick. He could not conceive that I wanted nothing. Is that all? He asked incredulously. That is all. I renounce any claim on your assets, present or future. In exchange, you renounce any claim on mine, and we sign the divorce as soon as possible. Tomorrow if possible. Mrs. Patricia Klein sighed almost inaudibly. She knew she was throwing away a potentially good compensation, but she also knew, because I had told her in private, that I did not want ties, not even the ties of his money. I wanted to make a clean break, burn the bridge. It is a more than generous offer, Mr. Lawson, Mrs. Patricia Klein said, addressing Marcus. You should accept it. Marcus exchanged a look with his lawyer. Mr. Harlan Whitaker nodded almost imperceptibly. It was an excellent deal for his client, too good. Agreed, Marcus said finally. But his voice did not sound triumphant. It sounded empty, perplexed. I will give you your things. You can come by and pick them up whenever you want. Let me know. I will go tomorrow morning at 10 when you are at work, I said, standing up. I do not want to see you. Lila. Wait. Marcus stood up too. Is there anything else to discuss? I asked with my hand on the doorknob. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just a slight blink, a doubt that crossed his eyes like a quick cloud. He shook his head. I went out into the hallway, followed by Mrs. Patricia Klein. Once outside, away from the door, she turned to me. That was foolish, Lila. A noble foolishness, but foolishness nonetheless. You had the upper hand. We could have gotten something, even a symbolic amount. For your independence. I am free, Mrs. Patricia Klein. That is priceless. And I do not want to be tied to him a minute longer than necessary, not even by a monthly bank transfer. I want him to disappear from my life as if he never existed. She looked at me with a strange mixture of exasperation and respect. You are stronger than you look. Very well. Tomorrow at 11 at the family courthouse. Be punctual. With this signed, it will be official in 24 hours. Thank you. As I walked down the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Marcus. He caught up to me, walking by my side. Lila, one moment. Tell me where you are going to live. That does not matter to you anymore, Marcus. Of course it matters, he said. And in his voice there was a hint of the old frustration, the one from when he could not get me to do what he wanted. God, why do you have to make everything so difficult, so dramatic? Accept the money at least. I do not want you to be on the street. I stopped and turned to look at him. Up close I could see the fine wrinkles around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. I could also smell his expensive woody cologne, and beneath it, a faint, almost imperceptible trace of another perfume, a floral sweet one. It was not mine. I never use perfumes like that. I will not be on the street. And I am not making it difficult. I am making it easy for both of us. Take your freedom. I take mine. It is fair. Fair, he repeated, and a dry, bitter laugh escaped his throat. You call this fair? Abandoning everything as if nothing had happened, as if the last 10 years had not happened. There was the core of his anger. It was not that I was leaving. It was how I was leaving. Without tears, without begging, without acknowledging his power, his ability to hurt me. I was supposed to be the destroyed victim and he, reluctantly, the one moving on. I had stolen his script. They happened, Marcus, I said, and my voice dropped to almost a whisper. Every minute of every day happened. And now they are over. That is all. Before he could answer, I turned on my heels and walked away. This time he did not follow me. Stepping out onto the street, the Los Angeles sunlight hit me full on. I took out the new phone Sophie had given me. I had a message. How did it go, Wolf? Did you rip out his wallet or something more vital? I smiled for the first time in a long time. A real smile that reached my eyes. I gave up everything. I just want my things. I am going tomorrow to pick them up. The ellipsis appeared immediately, showing she was typing. The reply took almost a minute. She must have been deciding whether to scold me or support me. You are an idiot, but an idiot with principles. Come. I am waiting for you with something stronger than wine. I walked toward the bus stop. I did not feel light. I felt empty, like a building after a controlled demolition. Only the open space remained, the dust settling, and a strange, expectant silence. The silence that comes after the roar. Tomorrow I would enter that house for the last time. I would collect the remains of the woman I had been before becoming a shadow, and then I would close that door forever. While I waited for the bus, a woman walked by pushing a baby stroller. She was humming softly. The baby laughed. Further down, a group of tourists argued about which museum to visit. Life, simple, noisy, normal, ran its course. And I, for the first time in 10 years, was part of it. Not as a caregiver, not as a wife, just as Lila. A woman with a new phone in her pocket, a blank future, and a past that was finally starting to weigh a little less. At exactly 10 in the morning the next day, I rang the doorbell of the house in Pasadena. Not with my key, which I had left on the kitchen table when I left, but as a stranger. The door was opened by a woman in a light blue uniform, about 50 years old, with a sour face. Yes, she asked, looking me up and down. Good morning. I am Lila. I am here to pick up some things. Ah, the lady, she said, without changing her expression. She opened the door and stepped aside. The mister told me you would come. He is at work. He asked me to supervise you. Supervise me. Like a thief. I nodded without saying anything and walked in. The smell of the house hit me like a fist. A scent of clean, of bland food, mixed with the faint medicinal smell coming from the room upstairs. But also floating in the air, a new aroma. A sweet, cloying perfume. It was not mine. It was not Margaret's. It was alien, invasive. I am just going for my personal belongings. I will not touch anything else, I said, addressing the aide or whatever she was. As you wish. I am with Mrs. Margaret. Let me know if you need anything, she said and went up the stairs with heavy steps. I was left alone in the living room. The light poured through the large windows, illuminating the dust that already danced in the air. The sofa where Robert used to sit and read the newspaper before his illness. The low table where I served coffee. Everything was the same and yet everything was different. I was no longer part of this scene. I was an intruder. I went straight up the stairs to the master bedroom, the one that had been ours. The door was closed. I opened it. The room smelled of him, of his cologne, of his sweat, of his absence. And also stronger here of that alien sweet, cheap, nauseating perfume. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled. On the nightstand on his side, a glass half full of water. On mine empty. Nothing of mine remained there. I opened the built-in closet. On one side, his suits perfectly hung, his shirts sorted by color. On the other side, the void where my dresses, my coats used to hang. Now there were only bare wooden hangers, swaying slightly with the draft like skeletons of something that had died. On the floor of the closet at the back I found an old suitcase. Mine, the one from before. I opened it. Inside, carefully folded, were my memories. The red ruffled skirt, now faded, some blouses from when I worked at the store, some jeans that would not fit me anymore. Clothes from another life. I took it out and left it on the bed. Then I knelt down and lifted the lid of the trunk that had served as a bench at the foot of the bed. There was all my past compressed in a small space. My dance shoes lined with silk, the soles worn and marked by the floor. My castanets wrapped in a handkerchief. A handful of playbills already yellowing. And at the bottom a cardboard box. I took it out. Inside, the photos. Me dancing at a festival back home. Marcus and I smiling with the city skyline in the background. A photo of my mother, young and beautiful in a flamenco dress. Old letters, diaries. And in a separate envelope, the results of the medical tests I took 5 years ago after the pains became unbearable. The ones I never showed anyone. The ones I hid here under everything else as one hides a shame. I heard footsteps in the hallway. It was the aide. Mrs. Margaret heard you arrive. She wants to see you. A knot formed in my stomach. I did not want to see her. I did not want to enter that room. I did not want to smell the illness, the sadness, the dependence. I wanted my things and to flee. Tell her that I am busy. That I only came to get some things. The woman looked at me with an expression I could not decipher. Pity perhaps. Or contempt. She insists. She says it is important. I sighed. I left the box on the bed and followed the aide down the hallway. The door to Margaret and Robert's room was ajar. The smell was more intense here. Disinfectant, barely disguised, stagnant time. Margaret was sitting in her armchair by the window. She was wearing a robe I had bought her years ago. Her hair, once so neat, was thin and messy. She looked at me with her blue eyes pale as the winter sky. Lila, she said, and her voice was a harsh whisper. Hello, Margaret. I just came to get some things. I will not bother you. Are you leaving? She asked as if she did not know. Yes. I am leaving. He does not know how to do anything, she said suddenly, with a spark of her old aggressiveness. He does not know how to heat the milk. He burns it. The new aide is clumsy. She hurts me when she moves me. They will get used to it, I said, unable to prevent my voice from sounding cold, distant. Margaret observed me for a long time. Her gaze traveled over my body, my borrowed clothes, my unmade face. You were right, she murmured suddenly. About what? That you were dying here. You told me once. Years ago. I laughed at you. I said you were exaggerating, that all women made sacrifices. But you were right. Her words surprised me. I did not expect lucidity, much less empathy. It does not matter anymore, Margaret. It does matter, she insisted, and her trembling hand pointed toward the closet in her room. There in the top drawer. There is something for you. I do not want anything. It is for you, she said, with a flash of her old authoritarian character. Take it and leave once and for all. This house is a tomb. Get out before it finishes burying you too. I blinked, bewildered. The aide, who stood by the door, looked at the floor, pretending not to hear. I approached the closet. I opened the top drawer. Inside, between handkerchiefs and old stockings, was a small blue velvet case. I took it. It was heavy. Open it, Margaret ordered. I opened it. Inside, on a faded satin background, was a brooch. An antique gold jewel with a dark stone, perhaps an onyx, in the center. It was not particularly valuable, but it was pretty. From another era. It was my mother's, Margaret said, and her voice broke a little. She gave it to me on my wedding day. I gave it to my daughter, but she did not want it. She said it was for old women. You never asked me for anything, not even a thank you. So take it. It is yours. I did not know what to say. This woman, who for 10 years had treated me with a mixture of disdain and dependence, was giving me the only thing of sentimental value she had left. Margaret, I cannot. Shut up and take it, she snorted, looking away toward the window. And now leave. I do not want to see you anymore. You remind me of everything I have lost, of everything I was. Leave. I closed the case, squeezed it in my hand. The cold metal dug into my palm. Thank you, I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. She did not reply, just kept looking out the window, her proud, broken profile silhouetted against the light. I left the room. Passing by Robert's bed, I stopped for a moment. He lay the same, connected to the machines, his eyes open but unseeing. I took a deep breath, holding back a wave of contradictory emotions. Sorrow, anger, relief. Then I left and closed the door behind me. In our room, I started packing the suitcase with my things. The clothes, the shoes, the cardboard box. Everything fit. It was not much. 10 years of life reduced to a suitcase and a trunk. While I folded my old red skirt, something caught my eye. On the floor next to the laundry basket, the tip of a shirt peeked out. A lilac silk shirt. It was not Marcus's. He would never wear something like that. I pulled it out. It was a woman's shirt, and it was impregnated with that smell, that sweet, cheap, invasive perfume. I held it in my hands. The silk was soft, expensive. A model I would never have allowed myself. And it was there, thrown on the floor of our bedroom like a flag of conquest, like a mockery. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Fast high heels. Then a woman's voice, young sing-song. Marcus, honey, I bought croissants. Are you there? The voice stopped dead upon reaching the landing. A young woman, maybe 25 years old, blonde, in a tight dress and a paper tray in her hands, stood petrified seeing me. Her eyes, large and made up, widened. She smelled exactly like the shirt and like the perfume floating in the air. Oh, she said, recovering quickly. A fake professional smile appeared on her lips. Hello. You must be Lila, right? Marcus told me about you. I am Taylor, the New Day aide. Lying blatantly. No aide wore stiletto heels, a party dress, and smelled of expensive perfume at 10 in the morning. No aide called her employer by his first name like that. And no aide entered the house with her own key and croissants. I looked at her without saying a word. I just looked at her. And in my gaze there must have been something, some flash of the coldness I felt, because her smile vanished. She looked down nervously. I am here to deliver some reports and leave breakfast. Marcus said he did not have time for breakfast today. I remained silent. I folded the lilac shirt carefully, as if it were a precious relic, and placed it on the bed on Marcus's side. Then I returned to my task, packing my dance shoes in the suitcase. Well, she said, uncomfortable. I will leave this in the kitchen then. A pleasure meeting you. She left the bedroom. I heard her heels retreating down the hallway, going down the stairs too fast. Then the front door closing. Silence returned. A denser, heavier silence than before. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pain. Just a deep, visceral disgust and absolute clarity. This was reality. The shirt, the perfume, Taylor. It was not just that he had stopped caring. It was that he had replaced me even before I left. He had brought the scent of another woman to our bed, to our house, while I was upstairs handling his father's care. I closed the suitcase with a sharp click. I closed the trunk. I carried both things to the landing. Then I went back to the bedroom, picked up the lilac shirt, smelled it one more time. That smell would remain forever etched in my memory, associated with this moment, with this final liberation. Instead of leaving it there or throwing it in the laundry basket, I did something strange. I folded it with even more care and placed it in the top drawer of Marcus's nightstand, right on top of his reading book. A business management volume he never finished. Let him find it. Let him smell her perfume when he went to sleep. Let him know that I knew. I took the bags down. The real aide, the one in the blue uniform, was in the kitchen watching television at full volume. I am leaving, I said. She nodded, without taking her eyes off the screen. Stepping out onto the street, the midday sun hit me full on. I took a deep breath, trying to clean my lungs of the stale air of the house, of the smell of illness and broken trust. I carried the suitcase and the trunk to the corner, where a taxi Sophie had ordered was waiting for me. The driver helped me put the things in the trunk. "Where to?" he asked. "To LAX," I said before I could think twice. As the taxi drove away from the house in Pasadena, from that life, from that self that had been buried there, I took out the case Margaret had given me. I opened it. The brooch shone in the sun. It was not a gift of love. It was a recognition, a payment for services rendered, a penance. I closed it and kept it deep in my purse. Then I took out my new phone. I had a message from Sophie. "Are you alive? Did you have to deal with anyone?" I smiled weakly. I replied, "Everything collected, including a surprise. Be there soon." I looked out the window. Los Angeles passed quickly. People walked, laughed, lived. I had a suitcase, a trunk, an onyx brooch, and a completely empty future. And for the first time, that emptiness did not scare me. It gave me a kind of peace. The peace of the desert after the storm. A vast and clean silence, ready to be filled with new sounds, with new footsteps. The taxi turned toward the airport. The enormous glass and steel building rose before me, full of possibilities, of destinations, of planes leaving for anywhere. I closed my eyes. I did not know where I was going, but I knew with a certainty that pierced me like lightning, that I would never again smell of cleaning products and lies. 1 week. 7 days. An eternity and a blink. In Sophie's loft, time had acquired a strange, elastic quality. It was not marked by medication doses, postural changes, or Margaret's crying. It was marked by the sun coming through the windows, the rhythm of Sophie coming and going from her studio, and the slow, hesitant beating of my own heart, learning to beat again. The appointment with the gynecologist, Sophie's friend, had been on a Tuesday. Dear. Rebecca Lang was a woman of about 40, with soft hands and a clear gaze. Without pity but with immense compassion. She asked no uncomfortable questions. She just listened, examined me, ran tests. And afterward, with the results in hand, she sat across from me in her quiet office. "Lila, there is nothing seriously organic," she said, her words falling like a blessing in the room. "You have ovarian cysts, several, but benign. What you describe, the pain, the extreme fatigue, the weight loss, is chronic severe stress. The kind that leaves a scar. Your body has been in survival mode for so long that it has forgotten how to function in normal mode." "And is that cured?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. "It is managed. With time, with rest, with doing things that fulfill you, not drain you. And with this," she added, writing on a prescription pad, "it is a mild anti-anxiety medication so you can sleep. And this is the contact for a therapist specializing in caregivers. She is excellent. Call her." I took the papers. They were maps of a new territory, the territory of taking care of myself. That night, for the first time in years, I slept straight through without dreams, without waking up startled at the slightest noise. Upon waking, the silence did not seem threatening. Seemed like a luxury. It was on the third day when I dared to open the trunk. The smell of mothballs and memories hit me as I lifted the lid. There they were, like relics of a lost civilization. I took out the dance shoes, held them in my hands. The black velvet was dusty. The wooden soles worn and curved from use. I ran my fingers over the nails on the sole that marked the beat on the floor. A shiver ran down my spine. "Are you going to take them for a walk?" Sophie asked from the bedroom door, leaning against the frame with a coffee mug in her hand. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "Maybe they do not fit me anymore. Neither physically nor mentally. There is only one way to know. I am not ready. No one is ever ready, Lila. You start and things work out. Or not. But you try." She put the mug on the table and approached. From inside the trunk, she pulled out the playbill from a downtown performance space. On the cover, out of focus but full of life, I was seen with my torso leaning forward, my arms raised, my skirt frozen in a spin. "You were good," she said, without embellishments. "Very good. They told you. You had spirit. That was 1,000 lives ago. Spirit does not have an expiration date. It hides, but it does not leave. She stared at me. I have been asking around. In the scene. Seeing what is cooking. Seeing if anyone remembers Lila Thompson. I froze. A mixture of panic and something akin to hope stirred in my stomach. Sophie. No. Yes. And I got lucky. Or not. You will see. She took her phone out of her pants pocket, searched for something, and showed me the screen. It was a social media profile. The photo was of an older man with gray hair and a mustache, lively eyes, and a wide smile. His name was Manny Herrera. The old wolf. My old teacher. My first and toughest dance master. I wrote to him, Sophie said, swiping her finger across the screen. I told him you were around Los Angeles, that you had returned. He replied yesterday. She scrolled to the conversation. The messages were brief, typical of the old wolf, who had never been a man of many words. Lila Thompson. The girl with the silver arms. Of course I remember. I thought the earth had swallowed her. Tell her if she has courage to come. Here in the historic district of Albuquerque, at the Lantern, there is always room for someone who is not afraid of sweat and truth. Let her ask for me. I read the message 1, 2, 3 times. The words danced before my eyes. The girl with the silver arms. No one had called me that in 15 years. I felt a lump in my throat so big it hurt to swallow. It is madness, I managed to say. I am out of shape. I have forgotten everything. I am 38 years old, Sophie. I am not a girl. You are 38 years old and have a whole life ahead of you. And Manny Herrera does not give away invitations. He knows what he sees. Maybe what he sees is that he needs you. For what? To clean the bathrooms of the club. Do not be silly, Sophie snapped, putting her phone away. He threw you a lifeline. It is your decision whether to grab it or not. But think about it. It is Albuquerque, Lila. It is your home. It is dance. It is you. She left the room, leaving me with the shoes in my hands and Manny Herrera's message burning in my mind. Albuquerque. The smell of chili and desert air. The sound of guitars in adobe courtyards. The cry of flamenco in the hot night. My mother in her polka dot dress clapping in the front row. My father, the scoundrel who had disappeared, who taught me my first steps before leaving forever. It was too much. I put the shoes down, slammed the trunk shut, and left the loft as if being chased. I needed air. I needed noise. I needed not to think. I walked aimlessly through the streets of Echo Park. It was mid-afternoon. The neighborhood was buzzing with life. Tourists, street performers, young people sitting on terraces. I let the current carry me, moving away from the ghost of my flamenco past, which now had a name, a surname, and a venue in the historic district. I ended up in a plaza. The afternoon sun gilded the bricks and arches. In a corner, a trio of street musicians, 2 guitarists and a singer, started playing. It was not pure flamenco. It was a rumba, something light and catchy for the tourists. But the beat, that 4/4 beat struck something inside me, like a switch that had been rusted for years. I leaned against a column, closing my eyes, letting the music wash over me. The sound of hands clapping the rhythm, the strumming of the guitars, the singer's raspy voice. It was like breathing for the first time after being submerged for a very, very long time. My feet inside my simple canvas sneakers began to move almost on their own. A slight heel tap. Then another. A small flourish. Nothing flashy. Just an instinctive, ancestral dialogue between my body and the music. I do not know how long I stood there with my eyes closed, marking a beat I had never forgotten. When I opened them, I saw a group of tourists recording me with their phones. I smiled in embarrassment and walked away from the column. But the feeling remained. A tingling in my legs. A warmth in my chest. A memory in my blood waking up after a long slumber. It is your home. It is dance. It is you. Sophie's words echoed with the sound of the clapping. I kept walking, no longer seeing the streets, lost in a whirlwind of fear and need. I passed by a sporting goods store. In the window, mannequins in workout clothes. I went in. I bought leggings, running shoes, and a shirt. They were not a ruffled dress. They were not dance shoes. It was a start. When I got back to the loft, Sophie was in the living room painting. She looked at me, saw the bags, and a slow smile spread across her mouth. Plan? She asked. Plan, I nodded. I need to recover my body, or what is left of it, before thinking about anything else. The next day at first light, I put on the new clothes and went down to a small park near the house. The air was cool, no one else in sight. I put on my headphones, found a playlist of instrumental flamenco music on my phone, and started running. Or rather, jogging. After 2 minutes, my lungs hurt. After 5, my legs felt like lead. After 8, I had to stop, doubled over, panting, my vision blurred. I was exhausted. My body, strong enough to lift an adult man, was weak for this. For freedom. I did not give up. The next day I went back. And the next. Every day a minute more. Every day a step less painful. It was not just exercise. It was an exorcism. I sweat out the anger, the frustration, the sadness of 10 years. I sweat out the smell of cleaning products. I sweat out the image of the lilac shirt in the nightstand drawer. I sweat out Marcus's voice saying, "Enough." A week after the run in the park, while we were having breakfast, Sophie dropped an envelope on the table. "It is for you." It arrived in my mailbox. I do not know how they found you. It was a large, thick paper envelope. My full name handwritten in elegant, old calligraphy. There was no return address. I opened it with fingers that trembled slightly. Inside, a letter and a plane ticket. Round trip. Los Angeles, Albuquerque. For the following weekend. Dear Lila, the old wolf told me you were in Los Angeles and that you were alive. That is something. I always thought that husband of yours had buried you alive. I see that in the end you decided to dig your way up. I am not writing to make you feel bad or to offer pity. I am writing because the lantern is without a dancer. The one I had went to try her luck in another city with a different opportunity. To each their own madness. I am old but not stupid. I know you have not stepped on a stage in 10 years. I know you must be a mess. But I also know that spirit, when it is real, is not lost. It just hides. And my nose tells me yours is just waiting for a clap to come out. The ticket is for next Friday. Come. Not to work, just to see, to smell the air, to listen, to remember who you were before you put on that caregiver's apron. If after that you want to return to Los Angeles and keep being the shadow of that other woman, that is your choice. But come. Here in the historic district, people still talk about Lila Thompson's arms. It would be a shame if it remained just talk. A hug, even if it is heavy, Manny the old wolf Herrera. Kiss. Do not make me waste the ticket. Pride is foolish when you have the chance to return home. The letter slipped from my hands. Sophie picked it up and read it quickly. She whistled softly. Wow. Old wolf knows exactly where to bite. I cannot go, I said automatically, but my voice lacked conviction. Of course you can. You have a ticket. You have an invitation. And most importantly, you have curiosity. I see it in your eyes. I am scared, Sophie. And if you were not, it would be stupid. Of course it is scary. It is scary to look straight at the ghost of what you could have been and were not. But it is scarier not to look at it and have it chase you for the rest of your life. I looked at the ticket. Los Angeles, Albuquerque round trip. A journey of about 2.5 hours. A journey back in time. A journey forward in my life. And what if I go and I am nothing? What if what was there before has dried up, broken? Then you have a beer, you thank the old man, and you take the same plane back. But you will have looked. You will have known. And that Lila is worth more than all the what-ifs in the world. That night I took out more than just the shoes from the trunk. I took out my old rehearsal dress. A simple black train dress already out of fashion. I put it on. It would not close properly at the waist. It was tight on the shoulders, but it was mine. I looked at myself in the mirror of Sophie's closet. I was not the thin and fierce young woman in the photo. I was a woman almost 40, with gray hair at the temples, tired eyes, a body marked by effort and sacrifice. But I was still me. Lila. Lila Thompson, not Lawson. Thompson. I played music on my phone. A slow, deep flamenco melody. The guitar tore through the air of the living room. I closed my eyes and for the first time in 10 years I raised my arms. Not with the grace of before. With clumsiness, with rigidity. But I raised them and took a step. Then another. I spun around, marking a beat my body remembered even if my mind had forgotten it. It was not pretty. It was not art. It was a struggle, a fight between my will and my sleeping muscles. Sophie appeared at the door and stood still watching. She said nothing. She just watched. And in her eyes I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. Tears. Not of pity, of pride. I stopped, panting, sweating, my heart racing. It was horrible, I said breathlessly. It was perfect, she replied with a broken voice. Because you have started again. That night, with the plane ticket on the nightstand, I stared at the ceiling. Albuquerque, the historic district, the lantern, the old wolf. My mother had been dead for years. My father disappeared. I had no one left there. Oh yes, I had the woman I used to be. And maybe, just maybe, I had the woman I could become again. I grabbed my phone, looked up the airport number. Then, looking at the paper ticket, I dialed another number. One I still remembered even though I did not want to. It rang 3 times. Then Marcus's voice. Tired, irritated. Yes, hello. I said nothing. I just breathed, looking at the ticket that would take me far away from him, from his alien perfume, from his house that was a tomb. Lila? Is that you? His voice changed. It became more tense. Lila, please speak. The parents, this is a chaos. The night aide left. I cannot handle it all. I hung up. His voice, his complaint, his need. Cut off abruptly. I turned off the phone, picked up the plane ticket, kissed it. It was my safe conduct, my escape, my return. On Friday at 9 in the morning, with a backpack holding just the essentials and my heart in my fist, I left Sophie's loft. Sure? She asked at the door. No, I replied, but I am going anyway. She gave me a tight hug. May the spirit be with you, dancer. In the taxi toward LAX, we passed by the street in Pasadena. Without meaning to, I looked up at the house window. On the balcony there was a figure. Marcus was there in a bathrobe, his hair messy, looking down at the street with a lost, defeated expression. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second through the taxi window and the distance. His mouth opened as if shouting something. But I was already far away, speeding toward the airport, toward the beat that had been waiting 10 years for me to hear it again. The city of Albuquerque, seen from the plane window, was a mosaic of desert earth, reddish rooftops, and the green stain of the river. A punch of nostalgia, sweet and bittersweet, hit me in the stomach. I was born here. I learned to dance here before I learned to write. I buried my mother here alone because Marcus could not or would not accompany me beyond the first 24 hours. The parents, Lila, cannot be left alone. You understand? Yes, I always understood. I got off at the Albuquerque Sunport. The air was different. Denser, warmer, heavy with the scent of desert sage from nearby gardens. I adjusted the backpack on my shoulder and waded into the crowd. I was not going straight to the historic district. First, I had a stop to make. The taxi dropped me at the old cemetery. The large white gates. The silence broken only by birdsong. I walked along the gravel paths, past mausoleums and niches, until I reached a more modest area of simple headstones. There, under a cypress tree, was my mother's Maria Thompson, 1955 to 2017. She danced until the end. A white marble slab slightly stained by moss and time. In a small stone vase, some dry, withered flowers. No one else came to visit her. I knelt not to pray, just to be there. Hello, Mom, I whispered, running my fingers over the engraved letters. It has been a while. I am sorry. The wind rustled the leaves of the cypress, a sound like a whisper. I think I have done something foolish. Or maybe the first sensible thing in 10 years. I left Marcus. I left everything. And now I am here because a grumpy old man called me. Because I think I forgot how to dance. Because I forgot who I was. And you were the only one who always knew. I placed some fresh flowers, daisies I had bought at a shop near the airport, in the vase. I took out my grandmother's old embroidered handkerchief from the box and wiped some dust off the headstone. You told me on my wedding day. You said, do not let them cover you, daughter. The shine must be polished, not hidden. And I listened to you in reverse. I hid it so much it almost went out. I think there is still a spark left. I am going to try to fan it. Help me if you can. Or at least do not laugh too much at me from wherever you are. I stood up, my knees creaking. A dull, familiar pain in my lower abdomen. Stress, the doctor had said. I rubbed my abdomen, breathing deeply until it passed. Then I turned around and walked away, feeling her presence, or the shadow of her memory, at my back like a gentle push propelling me forward. The historic district. The soul of Albuquerque. Crossing the Rio Grande Bridge was like crossing a portal. The air smelled of fried food, of soap, of damp river earth. The narrow streets, the adobe facades, the balconies overflowing with flower pots. And everywhere sound. Guitars playing from open windows. The tapping of heels in a courtyard. A radio tuned to a flamenco station. It was a constant symphony, the beating of a heart that had never stopped beating, and to which mine responded immediately by accelerating. The lantern was not one of the big clubs, the ones in tourist guides. It was in a blind alley, near the little chapel. The facade was discreet, painted deep red, with an old wooden door and an unlit neon sign. But as I approached, I heard it. The sound of a guitar strumming furiously. The sharp crack of clapping marking a lively flamenco rhythm. And above all, rapid, precise footwork, clean as a knife. Footwork that spoke of anger, joy, life. I pushed the door open. The interior was small, intimate. A few tables around a barely elevated wooden stage. The walls covered in black and white photos of artists, many long gone. The air thick with old candle wax. On the stage, a young girl, no older than 20, was dancing. Sweating, her face contorted in a mask of fierce concentration. Her thin, strong body bent and spun with a primitive animal energy. It was not pretty in the polite sense of the word. It was truth. It was anger turned into movement. And it was spectacular. In the back, sitting on a chair with a guitar in his hands, was him. Manny Herrera. The old wolf had aged, of course. His hair, once jet black, was now a messy gray mane. His mustache white. But his eyes were still the same. Black, lively, piercing like two burning coals. He was not looking at the girl. He was looking at the empty space she filled with her dance. He listened more than he saw. The guitar stopped suddenly. The clapping stopped. The girl froze on stage, her chest heaving, staring blankly into the distance. Then, as if coming out of a trance, she lowered her head. The old wolf set the guitar aside and stood up. He approached her. Slowly, he spoke into her ear. I could not hear what he said, but I saw the girl nodding seriously, absorbing every word. Then he patted her on the shoulder, a gesture of tough approval earned with sweat. She stepped off the stage and disappeared through a back door without looking around. Then the old wolf turned around. His eyes landed on me, standing still by the door. He did not seem surprised. He just looked at me for what felt like an eternity, scrutinizing me. He scanned my body from head to toe, like a horse trader evaluating an old mare. "Lila Thompson," he said finally. His voice raspy from tobacco and age, but with a force that echoed in the empty room. "You took your time." "The flight had a schedule, master," I replied, surprised my voice did not tremble. A slow smile that did not reach his eyes formed under his mustache. "Master, huh? I like that better. Come closer. Let me look at you." I walked to the edge of the stage. He did not step down. He stayed up there looking down at me. "You have changed," he declared. "It has been 15 years. I am not talking about years. I am talking about the light. Or the lack of it. They have turned you off, girl. Almost entirely." His words, so direct, so raw, should have hurt. But they were the truth. And the truth, after a decade of lies and half-truths, was a relief. "I know," I said simply. "Why did you come? Because of the ticket? A call would have sufficed. I came because you called me. And because I needed to hear it." "Hear what?" "This," I said, pointing to the stage. The air that still vibrated with the energy of the girl's dance. I needed to remember what the truth sounds like. The old wolf nodded. Slowly, he stepped down from the stage with a somewhat stiff movement. He approached me. He smelled of dark tobacco, old sweat, and cheap cologne. "The truth hurts, Lila. It costs. It leaves marks. As I see you already know." His gaze rested for a moment on my rough hands, my slumped shoulders. "I know. And do you want more? Do you want to try to reignite that little light you have left?" Even if it is just to make a small campfire, the kind that gives heat but not much light. I do not know if I can. Neither do I. But there is a way to find out. He pointed at my canvas sneakers. Did you bring shoes in the backpack? Put them on. And take off that jacket. You look like a frightened tourist. I sat on a chair with slightly trembling hands and pulled my old dance shoes from the bottom of my backpack. The black velvet was dusty. Putting them on, I noticed how strange they felt after so long, like a costume, like someone else's skin. I took off the jacket. Underneath I wore a simple shirt. It was not a ruffled dress. It was not the proper attire. It was just me. The old wolf returned to his guitar. He sat down, did not look at me, tuned a couple of strings distractedly. I am not going to play anything complicated for you. I am not even going to play. I am going to mark a beat. You listen. And then, if it comes out, answer. Not with steps. With the body. With the soul. If you can still find it. Let us see if you have anything left inside that is not silence. He began. It was not a melody. It was a rhythm. A slow, grave, deep flamenco beat. Tum patum patum. He marked it with his knuckles on the body of the guitar. A dry, bony, bare sound. I stood on the wooden floor facing him, eyes closed. The sound entered me. Tum patum. It was the beating of a heart. Or the strike of a pickaxe against a rock. Or the sound of my own tired footsteps for 10 years. First, nothing happened. I was empty. Frozen. Just Lila, a 38-year-old woman in ridiculous shoes, about to make a fool of herself before the man she respected most in the world. But then something moved. Not in my feet. In my chest. A tight fist of emotion, of contained anger, of dull pain, that had been imprisoned for so long it was part of the decor. The old wolf's beat gave it a key. Tum. The broken plate. Patum. The breathing machine. Patum. Marcus's voice. Enough. A shudder ran through me. Then another. My shoulders tensed. My arms, glued to my sides, began to rise. Not with grace. With painful slowness, as if breaking a crust of ice. The palms of my hands opened upward. Like asking. Like begging. Like cursing. I did not take a step. I could not. But my torso leaned to one side, then the other, following the beat. Like a tree swayed by a wind, only I felt. A moan, a dry groan escaped my throat. It was not a song. It was the sound of a rusted door opening. The old wolf never stopped marking the beat. His black eyes drilled into me without mercy, without breathing, seeing everything. The clumsiness. The pain. The spark. He continued like that for maybe a minute or an hour. Time dissolved in that primitive beat. Until suddenly my feet reacted. Not with elaborate footwork. With a single strike. Dry. Strong. Tack. A clear sound that cut the rhythm like a knife. The old wolf stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, vibrating. I was panting. My eyes were full of tears, but they did not fall. They just burned. He set the guitar aside. Slowly he approached. His gaze was no longer that of a judge. It was of recognition. It hurts, doesn't it? He asked quietly. Like hell, I managed to say with a broken voice. Good. That means it is not dead. Just very, very asleep. And full of badly healed wounds. I do not know if I can. Who talked about being able to? We are talking about wanting to. Do you want to, Lila Thompson? Do you want to dance again? Even if it hurts. Even if it is late. Even if it is just for you in a dark corner, without anyone seeing you. The question floated in the heavy air. It was not about talent. It was not about technique. It was about desire. The purest, most essential desire. Did I want this? Did I want this pain, this effort, this brutal truth instead of the comfortable numbness of the last years? I looked at my shoes. I looked at his eyes. And somewhere inside me, the spark flickered and turned into a small, trembling but alive flame. Yes, I said. And the word sounded like an oath. I want to. The old wolf nodded. For the first time, a real smile that reached his eyes lit up his weathered face. Then tomorrow at 9. Here. With clothes that can get stained with sweat and floor. And prepare yourself. I will have no mercy. You are 15 years behind and I am not young enough to waste time. Tomorrow? But I have a return ticket for the day after tomorrow. Change it or throw it away. If you truly want this, your place is here now. Not in Los Angeles. Not with that man who turned you into a piece of furniture. Here in the historic district, sweating until your soul comes out your feet. Or did you just come for sentimental tourism? There was no choice. In reality, there had been none since the moment I read his letter. I will be here at 9. Good. Now go. Rest. Or do not sleep, it does not matter. But tomorrow here. And do not be late. I hate tardiness almost more than dancers without spirit. I left the lantern with my legs shaking, but with a strange feeling in my chest. It was not happiness. It was purpose. A direction. An order. After a decade of receiving orders on how to care for others, for the first time I was receiving one on how to care for myself. And it was tough, demanding, almost cruel. But it was mine. I walked along the banks of the Rio Grande until nightfall. The city lights reflected in the dark water. I took out my phone. I had several missed messages from Sophie asking. I wrote to her. I am alive. It hurts. I'm staying a few more days. The old wolf does not bite. Yet. Then, almost without thinking, I opened the messaging app and typed a number. Not Marcus's. The house number. The landline. I knew the night aide would be there at that hour. Or maybe not. Maybe he would be overwhelmed like in his voicemail. It rang once, twice. On the third ring it was picked up. Yes. It was Marcus's voice. Tired, irritated, deeply tired. I said nothing. I just breathed, looking at the river lights. Who is it? Lila? Is that you? Please speak. This is impossible. The New Day aide, the one you saw, she left. She said she could not handle the pressure. Mom will not stop crying. Dad had a complication. He had to be taken to the hospital this afternoon. I am here alone. I do not know what to do. Lila, please. His voice broke. It was a sound I had never heard. Marcus crying, or almost. Defeated. For a second, the old instinct, the caregivers, the wives, fired up. I wanted to ask which hospital, what complication, if he needed anything. I wanted to offer help. I wanted to return. But then I looked at my hands resting on the river railing. They no longer smelled of cleaning products. They smelled of red clay dust and fresh air. And I heard in my memory the dry beat of the old wolf. Tum patum. Marcus, I said. And my voice sounded calm, clear, from an infinite distance. Yes? Yes, honey. The pathetic hope in his tone. The main gas valve is in the cutlery drawer in the kitchen. You have to close it if you leave the house for more than a day. You always forgot. Goodbye. I hung up. I turned off the phone, put it in my pocket, looked at the river one last time, breathed the air of Albuquerque and walked away from the railing. Not backward. Forward. Toward the cheap motel where I had booked a room. Toward the 9 o'clock class. Toward the pain waiting for me. Toward the life that finally, after so much time, was beginning again. And this time I was not going to take care of anyone but myself. The Los Angeles air smelled of recent rain and car exhaust. A smell that was no longer familiar to me after the weeks in Albuquerque, where the air smelled of river, earth, and desert sage. I had returned only for this. For this gray morning. For this final procedure. For this door I had to cross to close another one forever. The facade of the family courthouse was exactly as I remembered it from when I came, excited and nervous 15 years ago. Gray stone, wide stairs, a worn California seal. Nothing had changed. I, on the other hand, had changed completely. I wore the same simple black pants and blouse outfit I had worn to the attorney's office. In my backpack, only the essentials. The documents, a bottle of water, and the return ticket to Albuquerque for that same afternoon at 6:05. I had no intention of spending another night in Los Angeles. Mrs. Patricia Klein was already waiting for me on the steps, beige raincoat and umbrella in hand. Good morning, Lila. Ready. Very ready. He has not arrived yet. Neither has his lawyer. Typical. I breathed the damp air, watching the people coming and going. Young couples holding hands with faces of happiness and fear. Families with babies to register. and others like me with serious expressions, the look of someone about to close a chapter. Life in its eternal cycles, entering and leaving through the same doors. A taxi stopped abruptly. Marcus got out. He was not wearing a tie. His shirt was wrinkled, and his jacket did not match his pants. He had deep dark circles like bruises under his eyes. His hair, always so perfect, was messy. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Behind him, Miss Nicole Vance, his lawyer, in her impeccable suit and a poorly disguised expression of annoyance. "I am sorry. The traffic," Marcus murmured without looking me in the eye. "It does not matter. We are on time, Mrs. Patricia Klein said dryly. "Let us go in." The interior was cold with marble floors that echoed. It smelled of official paper and cleaning products. A bored-looking clerk directed us to a waiting room with blue plastic chairs. We sat down. Marcus and his lawyers on one side, Mrs. Patricia Klein and I on the other. A river of hostile silence separated us. Minutes passed. The ticking of a wall clock, the murmur of distant voices, the thud of a stamp could be heard. Marcus kept tapping his foot, checking his watch, rubbing his face. The tension radiating from him was almost palpable. By contrast, I felt strangely serene. I had made peace with this. I had cried, sweated, and bled for this on the wooden floor of the lantern. The paperwork was just the epilogue. "Lila," Marcus said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice sounded harsh, as if he had not spoken in days. I looked at him. I said nothing. "Are you okay?" he asked. And in his tone there was something that was not concern, but rather a hint of disbelief, as if he could not understand that I was whole, sitting there without falling apart. "Yes, Marcus. I am fine." He shook his head, as if my answer were an insult. "My parents. My father had pneumonia. He was hospitalized. It has been very hard." Miss Nicole Vance touched his arm, a warning gesture. "Do not talk about that here," she seemed to say. He shrank back but did not look away from me. His eyes scrutinized me, searching for cracks, weak points. He found only a smooth wall. "And you?" he insisted. "Where are you? Sophie refuses to tell me anything. I have called you." "I have been away," I said without giving more details. "With someone else?" The question came out like a whip, loaded with sudden petty resentment. Mrs. Patricia Klein opened her mouth to protest, but I interrupted her. "That is no longer your business, Marcus. Just like the lilac shirt that smelled of a sweet, unfamiliar perfume that I found in our bedroom was not my business. Or was it?" He turned pale. Miss Nicole Vance rolled her eyes. My lawyer hid a smile. "It was not." "It is not what you think," Marcus mumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. "I do not think anything. Not anymore." At that moment the clerk poked her head through the door. "Lawson Thompson. Come in." The judge's chamber was small, austere. A middle-aged man, wearing a robe and a face that had seen too many dramas to be fazed, sat behind a desk. He motioned for us to sit in front of him. The ritual was fast, bureaucratic, bare bones. Formulaic questions, monosyllabic answers. The confirmation that it was by mutual agreement. The warning about the legal effects. The ratification of the division of assets where I, on record, gave up everything. The judge looked at me over his glasses. "You understand, Mrs. Thompson, that with your signature you renounce any future economic rights derived from this marriage, including a possible spousal support pension." "I understand perfectly." "And you do this freely without any coercion?" "More freely than I have done anything in the last 10 years. The judge blinked, surprised by the frankness of my answer. Then he nodded, pushed the documents forward for us to sign. Marcus signed first. With a large, nervous signature. I signed next. The same signature as always. But this time I felt it differently. It was not a stroke on a paper. It was a clean cut. The judge stamped the seal with a sharp thud. The sound echoed in the quiet room. "The marital bond is dissolved. You are free. Here are your copies. Good luck." We left the room. In the hallway the feeling was strange. There was no relief or sadness. It was like leaving a movie theater after a very long and exhausting film. The light of the real world seemed too bright, too harsh. Marcus stopped, leaning one hand against the wall. He took a deep breath. Miss Nicole Vance was speaking to him in a low voice, giving him instructions about some papers, but he did not seem to be listening. He was looking at me with an expression I could not figure out. Anger, regret, relief. Perhaps a mixture of everything. Mrs. Patricia Klein gave my arm a light squeeze. It is official. It is done. Do you need anything else? No, thank you. You did everything perfectly. Then this is goodbye and good luck, Lila. Truly. She handed me a card. In case you ever need anything. I nodded and put it away. She walked off with her efficient heel clicking, leaving Marcus and me alone in the hallway. Miss Nicole Vance, after an uncomfortable glance, muttered something about waiting outside and walked away too. The two of us were left under the cold fluorescent light, with the sound of rain starting to hit the building's windows. The silence was thick, loaded with everything unsaid, everything broken. And now? Marcus asked finally. His voice was barely a whisper. Now I catch a taxi and go to the airport. You go to your house. To your life. To my life. He let out a bitter, hollow laugh. What life, Lila? My father is half gone in a bed. My mother has stopped talking. The house is hell. Work is falling apart. This is the life you left me. His words, his victim tone were the spark. The last drop. The serenity wrapping me cracked, exposing the cold, hard core of truth I had spent years polishing in silence. I left it to you? I asked, and my voice sounded so cold that even he flinched. I, Marcus? You took it from me. You and your family took it from me 10 years ago. Only now it is your turn to bear the consequences. And you do not know how, do you? You have no idea what it is like. Of course I know. I saw it. He protested with a flash of his old arrogance. You did not look. You did not see. I took a step closer. He backed away as if my coldness were contagious. Do you want to know what you saw, Marcus? Do you want to know what those 10 years really were? He said nothing. He just looked at me wide-eyed. They were waking up every 2 hours every night to assist your father so he would not get pressure sores. They were dealing with the scent of long-term care every morning before coffee. They were listening to your mother cry, not for your father, but for her lost youth, and having to comfort her while no one comforted me. They were learning to handle the feeding equipment without getting sick. They were giving up saying goodbye to my mother when she died, because we could not leave them alone here. They were pains in my abdomen so strong that sometimes I collapsed, and getting up anyway because there was no replacement. They were looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person there. They were, little by little, day by day, becoming a piece of furniture. A pair of useful hands. A ghost. My voice did not break. Every word was a block of ice thrown with millimeter precision. Marcus was pale, motionless. And you. You were there. You passed through. You slept in our bed, and then in our bed you brought the scent of someone else. And you had the nerve to tell me I had stopped taking care of myself. A crooked smile with no trace of humor formed on my lips. Do you know what the difference is between you and me, Marcus? I chose to care even if it killed me. You just chose to run away. And now, when running away is no longer an option, you complain that the wait is too much. Well, welcome to the wait. Let us see how long you last. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His face was a mask of shock. As if for the first time he was seeing not the unkempt woman he despised, but the real monstrous extent of his abandonment. I did not know about the pain, he managed to stammer. Why did you not ask? I exploded, raising my voice for the first time. A contained shout that echoed in the empty hallway. Never. In 10 years did you ask me, Lila, how are you? You never saw me. You only saw what I did for you. And you were so blind you did not even see I was breaking. And when I signed those papers you were surprised I did not cry. Do you know why I did not cry, Marcus? Because I had no tears left. I wiped them all away, one by one, handling your father's care and enduring your mother's insults. The last ones left me the day my mother was lowered into her grave, and I could not be there to hold her hand. The words poured out like a torrent. Unstoppable, true. There were no more breaks. There was no longer any reason to stay quiet. Marcus backed up another step, leaning against the wall. His breathing was heavy. His eyes were glassy. No. You cannot say that. It was not like that. It was exactly like that. And you know it. Deep down you have always known it. That is why it was so easy for you to ignore me. Because truly seeing me would have meant having to do something. It would have meant having to step down from the pedestal you had climbed on and get your hands dirty. And you have never ever wanted to get your hands dirty. I went quiet. The echo of my words faded, absorbed by the rain and the silence of the building. I was panting slightly. Not from effort, from liberation. I had said it all. Everything that had fermented inside me during a decade of silence. Marcus slid down the wall until he was almost sitting on the floor. He was not crying. He seemed to be in a state of shock. His eyes, fixed on the marble floor, did not blink. I just wanted us to be happy, he murmured in a whiny, childish tone. That sentence. That last pathetic justification was the one that triggered my final and definitive truth. The one I kept like a last missile. Not out of cruelty, but because until that moment I had not found a target worthy enough. I crouched down until I was at his level. Our eyes met. Mine clear and dry. His shattered and lost. Happy, Marcus? I said, and my voice recovered that terrifying calm. The calm of someone who has nothing left to lose. Let me tell you one last thing. So you know exactly the price of your happiness. The price of those 10 years. I paused, making sure every word would be burned into his memory. The doctor saw me 3 weeks ago. After years of pain, of an exhaustion that was not normal. After you, every time I complained, told me I was exaggerating, that we were all tired. I took a deep breath. I have serious internal complications from the chronic stress and physical demands. Adhesions. Scars from carrying weights my body was not built for. It is chronic. It is painful. And it has almost certainly left me unable to have children. His face completely fell apart. His mouth opened in a grimace of horror. What? Yes, Marcus. While you were working on your happiness and then bringing Taylor and her unfamiliar perfume into our house, the body you used to care for your parents was destroying itself inside. I will not be able to have children. I might never have been able to after so much time of neglect. That was the price. My body. My chance to be a mother. All to take care of your family. I stayed quiet. I had said the sentence. The nuclear truth. The one that reduced everything to rubble. Marcus looked at me and finally, the tears I had not shed poured from his eyes. They were not discreet tears. They were brutal, agonizing sobs that shook his entire body. He covered his face with his hands, and his back convulsed with moans. It was the cry of a man who suddenly sees the abyss beneath his feet and realizes he dug it himself. No. God, no. Lila. I am sorry. I did not know. I did not mean to. The broken words, choked by crying, slipped through his fingers. I stood up. I looked at him there, curled in a ball on the floor of the family courthouse hallway. A successful, well-off man torn to pieces by the truth. I felt no pity. I felt justice. A cold, bitter, and completely insufficient justice, because it would not give me back anything I had lost. Now you know, I said, adjusting the strap of my backpack on my shoulder. And with that, I wish you good luck, Marcus. You are going to need it more than I will. I turned around and walked down the hallway, moving away from him, from his sobs, from the life that had been my prison. His moans grew louder, desperate. I heard him shout my name through the tears. Lila. Lila, please. Wait. Forgive me, please. I did not stop. I did not turn my head. I walked toward the main door, toward the Los Angeles rain, toward the taxi waiting for me, toward the 6:05 flight, toward Albuquerque, toward the river, toward the beat waiting for me to dance my new life. With the scars visible and the soul finally traveling light. 1 year later. The air of the Albuquerque night was warm, sweet, heavy with the smell of desert jasmine and anticipation. Outside the club The Lantern, a line of people snaked through the alley. Posters pasted on the red facade announced, Lila Thompson, Return to the Origin. One night only. Below, a black and white photo. Not of the young dancer from before, but of the woman now. Her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes with expression lines. her gaze direct, defiant, full of a powerful calm. She was not smiling. She was looking inside. The buzz was a contained murmur. Packed to the rafters. Not just tourists. Familiar faces from the dance world, critics, old masters. And Sophie in the front row wearing a fire-red dress, holding the hand of her new girlfriend, an Italian sculptor who kept looking around in awe. Behind the coarse canvas curtain, I was breathing. Not the nervous panting of the girl I used to be, but a deep conscious breathing that filled every corner of my lungs. I was wearing a simple ruffled dress, jet black. It was not a flashy dress. It was a war uniform. My shoes the same as always but rebuilt with new soles. On my skin the marks, the scars from falls during rehearsal. The hard callus on my instep. My rough hands which no longer just spoke of cleaning products, but also of the friction of the wood, the floor, and the castanets. Manny the old wolf approached leaning on his cane. His condition had worsened over the last year, but his eyes were still the same burning coals. Ready, girl. Ready, master. It is not going to be perfect. I do not want it to be perfect. I want it to be true. That it will be. He patted my shoulder, a gesture that meant a hug coming from him. All of the historic district and half of Albuquerque are out there. And your mother's ghosts for sure. Go out and step on them all. Or sing to them or whatever comes out. But let it out without fear. The old companion stirred in my lower abdomen. A dull, permanent reminder. I accepted it the way one accepts a scar. I no longer fought it. I danced with it. The lights went down. A sudden heavy silence fell over the club. Then a single harsh white spotlight illuminated the center of the wooden stage. Empty. I walked out. Not with a triumphant entrance. I walked slowly, deliberately to the center of the circle of light. I stood there still. I let them look at me. Let them see the 39-year-old woman with her gray hair, her wrinkles. Her body, which was not that of a young girl, but of a survivor. I did not lower my gaze. I swept it slowly over the audience face to face without smiling. In the shadows of a back corner near the door, a figure shrank back as my gaze passed over it. I did not make it out. I did not care. Then I raised my arms. Not with the ethereal grace of before. With a heavy earthy movement. Like unearthing something. My fingers slightly curved, trembling at first, tensed. And I waited. From the darkness a guitar tore the silence. It was not a melody. It was a long, deep, agonizing wail. It was the old wolf's guitar, but the one playing it was his nephew, a young man with fingers of fire who had captured the essence of what I needed. A lament. That sound pierced through me. I was no longer Lila Thompson, the ex-wife, the ex-caregiver. I was a body full of stories. And the first story I wanted to tell was the story of anger. My heels hit the floor. 1, 2, 3 dry strikes. Like gunshots. Then a rapid burst, a flourish that echoed like a whip. I was not dancing to please. I was dancing to tear. My arms broke at aggressive angles. My face was a mask of fierce concentration. Every heel strike was an enough. I had never shouted. Every spin, an attempt to shake off arms that no longer held me. It was the anger of 10 years of silence, turned into sound, rhythm, sweat that began to soak my back. The audience was hypnotized. There was no joy in this dance. There was truth. And truth, when it is pure, hooks you, hurts you, and captivates you. The guitar shifted from lament to something more intimate, more painful. A slow, gray flamenco song. The kind that speaks of losses. I stopped. Sweat ran down my temples. I took a deep breath and let the anger settle, exposing what was underneath. Sorrow. An old black sorrow. Like a bottomless well. My movements became slower, more internal. My arms no longer broke. They wrapped around my torso as if protecting something. As if cradling an emptiness. My feet no longer struck. They dragged. They marked a beat of farewell. My gaze was lost in the void beyond the audience. I was no longer in the club. I was in the room in Pasadena, next to Robert's bed. I was in the cemetery, in front of my mother's headstone. I was in the doctor's office hearing the word complications. A single impertinent tear escaped my eye and traced a shiny path down my dusty cheek. I did not wipe it away. I let it fall, let it mix with the sweat on the neckline of my dress. This was the sorrow of the irretrievable, of the lives that were not lived, of the children that would not arrive, of the youth spent caring for an old age that was not mine. The young man on the guitar felt it. His music grew fainter, more mournful. A discreet accompaniment to my pain turned into dance. Then another transition. A roll of fingers on the wood of the guitar. An announcement. The music started to gather strength to raise its pitch. It was not joy yet. It was determination. Strength. I lifted my head. The tear was dry. The sorrow danced out, expelled, transformed into something else. Into power. Into an I am here. I started marking a faster, more complex beat. The heel strikes became crisp, precise. A rain of sounds that spoke of recovered craft, of muscles remembering, of a soul reclaiming what was its own. I spun once, twice. The black skirt opened like a pair of dark wings. They were not the dizzying spins of a 20-year-old. They were the spins of a woman who knows how heavy the ground is, who knows the fall, and who still chooses to spin. The audience began to clap the beat. Timidly at first. Then with more force, caught by the rhythm, by the transformation they saw on stage. Sophie shouted with her raspy voice, and others joined her. I could no longer hear them. I heard the blood in my ears, the beat in my bones, the old wolf's voice saying, "Let it out." And I let it all out. The broken woman, the strong woman. The woman being reborn from her own ashes, with scars and with pride. The music reached its climax. A whirlwind of sound. And with a final furious rolling heel strike that sounded like a final door slamming, I stopped. Arms raised, head held high, chest heaving, bathed in sweat, flooded with light. Still. The silence was absolute for a second that lasted an eternity. Then the eruption. The applause, the shouts, the cries of approval rose like a wave, filling the small club, threatening to blow off the roof. Whistles blew. Tables were pounded. It was a wild, true recognition. I lowered my arms. Breathing heavily, a small, real smile appeared on my lips. It was not for the audience. It was for me. I had done it. I was back. Not to be who I was. To be who I am now. Stepping off the stage amid hugs and pats on the back, my gaze inevitably drifted toward that back corner near the door. The spot was empty. Just an unoccupied chair. And on the floor next to it a small object reflecting the light. I pushed through the crowd, indifferent to the congratulations. It was an expensive silk men's handkerchief. Navy blue. And on top of it something hard and cold. Picked it up. It was the brooch. Margaret's onyx brooch. The one she had given me the day I left. But it was not alone. Right next to it, clumsily hooked on the old clasp, was a ring. His wedding band. Mine I had taken off a year ago and thrown into the Rio Grande from the bridge. I took the brooch. The ring I left on the floor. A waiter would step on it later, or they would sweep it up. I did not care. Sophie pushed her way toward me, her eyes shining. "You crushed it, girl. You crushed it." They cried. I saw critics crying. "Did you see him?" I asked, showing her the brooch. Her smile faded. She nodded gravely. "Yes. He was there in the back. He arrived late, left before you finished. But I saw him. I saw him when you started the slow, grave flamenco song, the part about the sorrow. He got up and left. He could not bear it." She paused. "He looked awful, Lila. Emaciated. Old." I said nothing. I kept the brooch in the palm of my hand. The metal was cold. 3 months earlier, Pasadena. Marcus hung up the phone. Another no. The third care facility to reject his father's admission. Too much dependence. Needs specialized care. We have no vacancy. The house was a wasteland. It smelled of long-term illness and spoiled food. The last aide, a kind woman with clumsy hands, had left the week before after Margaret, in a fit of furious lucidity, called her names. Now they wanted no one. He was alone. His father, Robert, had worsened. The pneumonia had left him weaker, more absent. He just breathed. His mother, Margaret, had taken refuge in an almost total muteness. She only spoke to ask for something or to curse her luck or him. His construction company, the one that had grown while Lila held up his world, was cracking. Clients noticed his absence, his mistakes, his lack of focus. His partner was talking about taking some time. And Taylor, the one with the sweet perfume, had lasted exactly 6 weeks. She left the day she had to help him with his father's accident. I did not sign up for this, Marcus. You told me they were delicate little old people. Not this. She left, taking her perfume and the last bit of illusion he had left. Marcus poured himself a whiskey, his third of the morning. He dropped onto the living room sofa, the same one where his father used to read the newspaper. Now it was empty. He looked around. The perfect house, the perfect life he had built was a farce. And the pillar that held it up, the one he never saw, was gone. And in leaving, she had taken the ground beneath his feet. His phone buzzed. An email with a link from an old friend in Albuquerque. Is this your ex? Unbelievable. What a comeback. He attached a link to a cultural newspaper in Albuquerque. Lila Thompson. The return of a spirit that never left. With his heart pounding, he clicked. There she was in the photo, on the stage of a club called The Lantern. Dancing. Or rather, warring. Her expression was of a painful, powerful intensity. She was no longer the dull woman who had signed the divorce. She was someone else. Someone whole. Someone free. And he was here, in the middle of the ruin he himself had created, drowning in whiskey and his own misery. The crying started again. The brutal sobs that assaulted him since that day at the family courthouse, when his world shattered into pieces. He cried for his father, for his mother, for his business. But above all, he cried for her. For what he had done to her. For what he had destroyed. For the sentence that echoed every night in his head, sharp and lethal. Almost certainly unable to have children. He who had never wanted children, who saw them as a hindrance to his career, suddenly understood the monstrous extent of his theft. He had stolen her choice. He had stolen a possible future. He had stolen pieces of her body, of her soul. And all while she was caring for what he loved most. He stood up, stumbling, went to the bedroom, opened his nightstand drawer. There, under some papers, the lilac shirt was still there. It no longer smelled of perfume. It smelled of dust and guilt. He pulled it out, and for the first time, he smelled not the betrayal but his own wretchedness. That night he knocked on his mother's door. Margaret was in her armchair, staring at nothing. "Mother," he said with a raspy voice. "Lila. Lila is going to dance. In Albuquerque. In a club." Margaret turned her head slowly. Her blue eyes, so pale, rested on him. There was a flash. Something akin to a painful recognition. "That was her thing," she murmured with her cracked voice. "Dancing. Until we tied her here. Until you tied her here." "Not me." "Yes, you. I was sick. Your father half gone. But you were healthy. You could have freed her. And instead, you handed her the chain." A rare, precious tear appeared in her eye. "Me too. I helped you because I was afraid. And now look where we are. And look at her. She flies with our broken chains." Margaret turned her head back to the window, closing the conversation and with it any remaining trace of complicity there might have been between them. Marcus stood there, with his mother's condemnation ringing louder than any judge's. She was right. He had the keys and he used them to lock her up. Now Albuquerque. At dawn. After the performance, the party at the Lantern lasted until dawn. Laughter, wine, music, hugs. I received offers from a bigger club, for a tour, even from a choreographer who spoke of the authenticity of transformed pain. I listened to them, thanked them, said yes to nothing. For the first time in my life, time was mine. I was going to spend it however I pleased. When I stepped outside, the sky over the river was beginning to lighten, from a dark blue to a pale indigo. The cool air washed the smell of sweat and wine from my skin. Sophie and her girlfriend had left exhausted. The old wolf had retired hours ago, exhausted but with an ear-to-ear smile of satisfaction. I walked alone toward the bridge. I needed the silence. I needed the river. In the middle of the bridge I stopped. I took 2 things out of my purse. Margaret's onyx brooch and Marcus's wedding band, which I had eventually picked up from the floor. I looked at the river, slow and powerful under the dawn light. This river had taken everything. My childhood, my mother, my first illusion. And a year ago, my wedding ring. I opened my hand. The brooch shone faintly. It was not my past. It was a trophy. A recognition of the war I had fought and won. I closed my hand over it again and put it away. I was going to keep it as a reminder that even from shipwrecks, beautiful things can be rescued. Then I looked at Marcus's gold band. Simple. Masculine. Loaded with broken promises. I felt nothing. Neither hate nor resentment. Just a light emptiness, like the one left after a very old pain is gone. There was no need for a dramatic gesture. I just opened my fingers and let it fall. The ring spun a couple of times, catching a glint of the dawn before disappearing with a soft plop into the dark waters of the Rio Grande. There was no ceremony. Just happened. I leaned on the railing looking east, where the sun was beginning to peek out. The air smelled of river, of life, of future. The pain in my abdomen was there. A constant reminder. But it was no longer a chain. It was part of my geography. Like the gray hairs. Like the scars. I knew Marcus was destroyed. I knew from the calls from unknown numbers I never answered. From his mother's increasingly confused messages that sometimes arrived on the old phone I barely used. I knew his life had fallen apart. And I felt no joy. I felt nothing. His suffering no longer belonged to me. Just as mine no longer belonged to him. I had paid a very high price for my freedom. But now finally I was free. Not of him. Of the woman I was with him. Of the prison. Of the guilt. Of the duty. Of the invisibility. The sun finally peeked out, a brutal edge of gold over the historic district skyline. It illuminated the river, the bridges, the adobe walls. It illuminated my weathered face with the traces of years and battles. And I smiled. A wide, peaceful smile that filled me entirely. I turned my back to the river and started walking toward the neighborhood. Toward the smell of freshly brewed coffee and freshly baked bread. Toward the new day. Toward the life that, against all odds, against all loss, I had managed to claim for myself alone. Not as anyone's shadow. As Lila Thompson, flamenco dancer, and finally master of her own painful, glorious beat. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.